Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you that don't know me, I am Cat Meffan, and welcome to a little chat on my sofa. Hopefully, if you're like sitting on your sofa with a cup of tea, and I'm sitting on my sofa with a cup of tea, then we kind of feel like we're in the same room just having a casual chat. So I wanted to film a Q&A for you guys. Sorry, just getting comfortable. I wanted to film a Q&A that was a bit more of like a personal kind of get to know me rather than... Right there, Simba? He just kind of like flopped onto the floor and closed his eyes. Sorry about that. I wanted to film a more personal Q&A for you guys that was just, yeah, a little bit more like a get to know me rather than it be kind of like tips and stuff like that, which I'm obviously more than happy to film for you guys. So if you do have any other questions that are more maybe kind of like yoga focused or fitness focused, then please do comment below and I can maybe do another Q&A at a later date. But I'm gonna get started and I'm gonna try and make my answers as kind of like quick as possible so I can get through a lot of the questions that you guys asked over on Instagram, because there were so many, so I've kind of picked the ones that were sort of similar and got asked quite a few times. So let's go for the first one, which is, how do I work out? So I get asked this a lot, I guess because a lot of you guys also follow me on Instagram, and my main Instagram feed is very yoga focused. And then I get questions about, do I do any other types of training and stuff like that. But if you actually watch my Instagram stories, you'll see a lot of the way that I train aside from yoga. So yes, I train, I do workouts. So sometimes there'll be like more kind of sweaty HIIT workouts. Other times I'll be lifting weights. I really love kind of calisthenics because I'm an ex-gymnast, so I love hanging on bars. I'm not at all very good at it. But it's something that I want to get better at, and it's a goal that I've got for this year, is to be able to do some more stuff on the bars. I also love bouldering, and I miss bouldering. There isn't a good place near where I live, which, yeah, really sucks. So I can only go when I'm with my brother down in London, which is kind of not that often because I'm always so manic. But, you know, if you love something, you can't make excuses. So note to self, I'm giving myself some advice here, just to go to bouldering and to, you know, get it done because I love it. And if you haven't tried it, I massively recommend it. So yeah, they're the things I do, and I love hiking as well. And that doesn't necessarily just mean going on like fancy holidays and going on big mountain hikes. Just hiking locally of a weekend, like Rob and I will just put our walking boots on and we'll go for sort of like a 10-mile walk. Not always 10 miles. Sometimes it's quite a bit less. But yeah, it's really nice to kind of discover local areas. And even if you live in a city, I'm pretty sure in the UK, if you live in a city, you're still not that far away from a kind of like a massive park or a rural area. So yeah, it's a really nice way to kind of keep fit and be outside in nature. How do I juggle a busy life? For example, today I really wanted to go to yoga, and I also needed to go to yoga. I had to walk Simba, I have to film this video, but I also needed to do some jewellery orders and get to the post office. So Simba and I walked to the post office and the machines were broken, and I was like, oh my gosh. So then we had to come back here, figure out what we were going to do, and then we walked into town and came back again. So it basically added on, and I know I probably didn't need to walk, but I didn't want to leave Simba at home because he'd already been left earlier in the day when I did yoga. So it probably added on like a sort of 45 minutes to an hour of my day. But, I mean, am I sad about that? I was a bit stressed at the time. I think I've just kind of learnt to, like, what will happen as long as I'm being as productive as possible. So I love a to-do list. If you don't write your to-do list, and you're asking me how I juggle a busy life, and you're wondering how to juggle a busy life, then I would massively recommend just starting with a bit of a list each morning, or maybe the night before, which I find really helpful. Write it down, prioritize the things that you've got going on, and also just make sure that you put time for yourself. So, and don't see time for yourself as like necessarily a luxury, because it shouldn't be. Okay, so like, to be in a balanced lifestyle, we have to have this balance between, you know, work and then outside of work life. And that doesn't mean to say that either one is, you know, more important, although I would argue that time for yourself is more important. But we all have, you know, mortgages and rent and life to pay for, so I fully appreciate that work is important as well. For me, I write a list, I prioritize, and I don't always get everything done, and yeah, it can kind of be stressful. And there's days where I don't get to the gym, and my yoga practice is about 5 minutes of a like meditation and stretch in the morning. But I think that actually for me, since having Simba, the dog, for anyone that hasn't, doesn't maybe follow me on Instagram and hasn't watched another video, I've recently adopted a dog, Simba, and I think actually having him, having to walk him, having to kind of spend time with him, feed him, all of that stuff, has actually just made me realise that a lot of the other things I was stressing about that I needed to get done really aren't worth stressing about, because I've now got this other being that I want to put like my time and my love into. So yeah, hopefully that kind of answers your question in a roundabout way, but I think that because my lifestyle is, it's not quite as simple as like the 9 to 5 job, because my no day is ever the same, so it's kind of a bit of a tricky one really to work around, because some days are a little bit more chilled and other days are just like as we all very well know. What are my thoughts on marriage? I wonder if Rob will be watching this. So Rob and I have been together 7 years, and my thoughts on marriage are that if it happens, it happens. I've never been somebody that has dreamt about the big white wedding. I've always kind of had thoughts about, you know, a nice woodland wedding or a really chilled out bohemian beach vibe wedding. And then I look at the price of it and I'm like, I'd rather travel the world. That is really what it comes down to. And I know that a lot of people say that it is all about kind of getting your loved ones together, which it is, and it's great. But I kind of feel like I could do it on a much lower scale than maybe what is traditionally expected. And also, going back to tradition, I really, you know, getting married was all about kind of like two people becoming one and all of that, which it obviously still is, but I think sometimes in this modern world we get a bit wrapped up in kind of like what everyone else is going to be thinking of our wedding, you know, like, you know, will the guests enjoy it? Well, to be really honest, your wedding's all about you, and it needs to be whether or not you enjoy it, and obviously your loved ones are going to be there and they're going to be happy about it if you're happy about it. So yes, if Rob proposes, I will say yes, of course, because I love him to pieces and I fully see, you know, our lives together. We have our dog, we have our house, but I'm just not that, like, fussed. And because I'm such a jewellery fiend, I have enough rings. I wear a ring on every finger. Well, actually not right now, other than my ring finger anyway. So, you know, I don't really necessarily need to fill that gap, and if I did need to fill it, I could just buy myself a ring. I guess that's kind of how I see it. But moving on to jewellery, because lots of people always ask about my jewellery. This is going to be a really quick answer. Do I buy my jewellery in the UK, or do I get it online from America? I get my jewellery from numerous different places. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to link to my favourite websites below, and you guys can go and peruse the online aisles. I think that's probably the easiest way of doing it. Sadly, I am no longer doing my own jewellery collection, which is where this pendant is from, before you guys ask, so it always get lots of comments. I'm not doing it anymore just because I'm trying to focus on retreats and teaching and blogging and everything. So yeah, that is no longer, but I'll link below to lots of amazing websites where you can get beautiful jewellery. Another question I kind of weirdly had asked quite a few times, which I wasn't expecting, was why don't I live in London? Because I think obviously people see me going into London. I teach my regular Tuesday class at Frame in London, and I'm obviously there for filming and stuff. It's two reasons. I love London, I really do. I think it's great. But I'm like a 24 hours in London kind of girl, and then I've got to get back to the countryside and breathe. Or not even necessarily the countryside, just kind of out of that hustle and bustle. Everyone's kind of like head down, like storming on through the street, and I kind of find myself dipping back into that like hectic, you know, breathing up into my neck kind of vibe when I'm there. And it's great, and it's obviously, it's kind of a shame because lots of my friends are in and around London. But for Rob and I, we live in Stamford in Lincolnshire. And we actually moved up here, well, Rob moved up here first for a job, and then he went freelance, but we were going to move back actually closer to my parents in Hertfordshire, or closer to sort of his family in Essex, but we decided that we would much rather be able to actually afford a house rather than afford kind of like a studio flat. So we were able to get our house, which we love, and we got a garden, and I wouldn't change it at all. Like, I don't know that we'll be here forever because we both like dream of living by the sea, but for now it's great, and you know, it's an hour and a half into King's Cross, so it's perfect. And I don't do that every day, obviously. I'm not sure that I could do this commute every day, partly because of the time, partly because it's so crazy expensive. Trains are so expensive. But yeah, like for now it worked perfectly, just going into London once or twice a week. Okay, the truth about my yoga practice. I've kind of given it that title because I got asked lots of questions kind of on a similar vibe, and the basis of the question was, what was my yoga practice really like before I did my teacher training, or kind of when I first started yoga? And I think with me, I've always been very upfront and honest. Oh, sorry, just repositioning again. I've always been very upfront and honest about the fact that I am an ex-gymnast and an ex-dancer. So naturally, and I have what's called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, so it's a hypermobility in the joints. So I'm naturally mobile, naturally flexible. Yoga taught me something different. Yoga taught me how to control my bendy limbs, and it's something that I'm still working on now. And the reason I came to yoga was because I had my knee reconstructed, so I needed to find a way of kind of working through movement, because I was so passionate about the way the body moves but without impact, and that's what kind of brought me to yoga. And I will never forget that very first trikonasana that I did, triangle pose, in my first yoga class that I dragged my mum along to, and I was like, what are these muscles? This is so hard. And I really loved it for the physical sense. And I think coming to yoga for the physical is a great way to then delve deeper into the practice. It wasn't actually until I did my first teacher training that it opened my eyes up to this like whole other world that yoga really is, you know, about kind of how we live our lives. So yeah, my yoga practice was always I hate saying advanced, because it doesn't, in yoga it kind of doesn't really mean anything, but if you're looking at it from like a physical asana point of view, like could I do the splits? Yes. Could I do a handstand? Yes. It wasn't great because I'd been out of gymnastics for so long, but do you see what I mean? So I already had those skills. It was just learning about the yogic way of doing them, learning about the breath, all of that stuff, and finding that meditation whilst moving. So that's kind of like where I was at when I came to yoga. And then I'm going to make this my last question because I don't want to keep you guys here too long. But another question is how I got started in this business. So I kind of think that a lot of people were actually referring to the blog and the Instagram side of things rather than the yoga side of things. But I'll touch upon all of it. So I actually used to work in PR. Before that, I was a PA at a private equity firm. And it was really fun. I knew that my life wasn't, I wasn't destined to kind of like stay being a PA, but it was great while it lasted, and the company and the people were awesome. And then I moved into PR, into jewellery PR specifically. I didn't go to university. Actually, that's a lie. I went to university for about 3 months and I could not deal with it. No. It just wasn't for me. I'm a learn on the job sort of person. I'm not a kind of sit in lectures and sort of person. I just couldn't do it. So I dropped out of uni and I just interned. First I interned at Urban Outfitters, and then I interned at Links of London, and after interning at Links of London I got a job and I kind of worked my way up there before then moving on to be PR manager at Garrard, who are the old Crown Jewellers. So I kind of like worked my way up in PR and then decided that I wanted something a bit more fun, went over to the agency side. I realised I'm answering this question in a very roundabout way because I'm telling you my backstory in jobs when actually that wasn't the question. But it kind of like sets you up kind of for how I got into it. And when I was working at this agency, I decided to start a blog because I was getting back into, after kind of struggling with eating disorders and things like that in the past, I really wanted to get my confidence and my, I just wanted to get my body feeling good again and my mind feeling good. So I started this blog, and the blog Imperfect Matter was there to inspire me. It was always a blog that, it was my hobby. I would go home, my mum and dad would be like, why are you just sitting up in your room like tapping at your laptop? And I was like, because I like it. I'm really enjoying just sharing like my thoughts on stuff. I never in a million years thought that I would A, get sent anything for free, and B, get kind of, you know, the opportunities that I get now, like being able to work with brands, teach yoga for brands, work on amazing content and products and just stuff like that. And I think that that is the beauty of blogging when I started, is that it was very much just a hobby. I think now it's become such a massive job for people that people kind of, you know, are coming out of school and uni, like that's what I want to do. But I guess what I would say is if you are thinking about starting a blog, just always start it for the right reasons. Start it because you're passionate about something, about a topic. For me, it was fitness. And then that later developed into what it is today, which is kind of like a wellness lifestyle blog. And it's funny because it was always there to motivate me, and it still does to this day. But now it's a source of kind of motivation and inspiration for others, which is, it blows my mind. I find it absolutely amazing that people still read my blog and people are watching my YouTube videos and are part of my journey. And so I then kind of was running the blog just as my hobby, and I got a freelance job so that I could then focus on the two of them together. And then I was also working on launching my jewellery collection at the same time. So it was kind of like I had these three things going on. I've kind of always been in that scenario where there's like more than one job, even now with the blog and the yoga retreats and the teaching and then what was the jewellery. So yeah, it all kind of grew really organically, really slowly. Like I've been blogging for nearly 5.5 years. So it's not been kind of like a quick year on Instagram and it suddenly shot up. You know, it's been a really kind of long time of me just putting my heart and soul into it and seeing what happens. And that's what makes it like even more rewarding for me. And that's not to say that anyone that grew quickly shouldn't feel great about it, because that's awesome. But just for me, I was like, yeah, I've worked really hard, and there were definitely days where I was gonna quit. Rob could probably sit here, thank God he's not here, and tell you about the numerous times I was just like, oh, no one's reading it, no one's, you know, commenting, this, that, and the other. And then he just looked at me every single time and he was like, do you enjoy doing it? And I was like, yeah, I love it. And he was like, well then, that's all that matters. So you're a very wise boy that I've got there. But that kind of answers that question of like how I got into it. If you want me to elaborate more on like the business side of things, then I can do, and I'll do it in another video. So comment below with more kind of like businessy questions, and I'll maybe do kind of like the business of blogging or something like that video if you guys want that. I can definitely talk about that more. But I'm gonna leave it there. Hopefully you know me a little bit better now. Maybe comment below and tell me something about you. You know, why not? Let's kind of like share things about each other. Also, just in case anyone wants to know, I really hate mushrooms. I'm gonna leave you with that fact. I'm like a vegan that really hates mushrooms. You can imagine how hard that is, because pretty much when you go to a restaurant, the one vegan dish is like, there's a mushroom risotto. And I'm like, no. Sorry, I just added in an extra Q&A for myself there, just to share that with you. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you again very soon. Bye-bye.